Your about page isn't there to prove you're qualified. It's there to answer one question. And most advisors never actually answer it. That question is, can I trust this person with something this important to me? So today I want to talk about the about page. And honestly, there's some things about this industry that make this page both more important and more commonly messed up than almost any other page on your site. And I want to introduce something I call the trust page, which is really just a different way of thinking about what this page is even for. Because if you think about it as an about page, you write a biography. If you think about it as a trust page, you write something completely different. So I'm going to walk through what that shift actually changes, what goes on the page, what order it goes in, the photo, the voice, all of it. I'm Justin Hinkle. This is the Travel Advisor website show. Subscribe for more. Okay, so think about this from the visitor side for a second. Someone's been on your homepage, they've gotten a sense of what you do, who you work with, that kind of thing. And now they're clicking over to your about page because they want to go deeper. They want to know more about you specifically as a person. And here's the thing about travel, it's personal, right? Like genuinely personal. Someone's about to hand you a trip they've maybe been thinking about for months, sometimes years. Sometimes it's a once in a lifetime thing, a honeymoon, an anniversary trip, milestone birthday, whatever it is. And they're not going to just hand that over to anybody. So when they land on your about page, they're not really thinking, let me verify this person's resume. That's not the question running through their head. The question is, do I trust this person? Do they seem like they actually care about getting this right? Do they get what I'm looking for? Would I actually enjoy working with them? And now picture what they find instead, a bio. I got into the travel industry in 2014. I hold my certified travel professional designation. I'm affiliated with this host agency and this consortium. All of it true. None of it answering the actual question they came there with. And that's the gap. That's what I want to get into today. So here's the reframe I want to offer you. Stop thinking of it as your about page. Start thinking of it as your trust page. Because, and this sounds like a small thing, but it really isn't, the name you use for something in your head changes what you write. If it's an about page, you sit down and think, okay, what should people know about me? And you start listing things, where you started, what you're certified in, how long you've been doing this. That's a totally natural way to fill out a page called about. But if it's a trust page, if that's what you're calling it in your head while you write it, the question changes completely. Now you're asking, what would make a stranger feel like they could trust me with something this important? And that's a very different page. It's not a list of facts about you. It's a series of moments that build a feeling. The feeling of, okay, I think I get this person and I think they get me. And so that's the whole shift. Same page, same real estate on your site, completely different job. And once you start seeing it as a trust page, it's honestly hard to go back to writing it the old way. Now, I don't want this to come across as credentials don't matter, just be charming. That's not what I'm saying at all. Honestly, in this industry, I'd say credentials matter more than they do in a lot of other businesses. Your CTA designation, your CLIA membership, your destination specialist training, your host agency affiliation, those things tell a client you've put in real work to know this stuff at a real level, that you're operating professionally, that you've got supplier relationships and support behind you, that you didn't just decide to start booking trips last month. So include that stuff. Definitely include it. But here's the distinction I want to draw, because it matters a lot. There's a difference between listing a credential and contextualizing it. CLIA certified cruise counselor, that's a checkbox. It means something to you. It probably means almost nothing to the person reading it. But I'm CLIA certified, which means I've gone through formal training specifically on cruise products, the ships, the lines, how itineraries are structured, what to actually look for when comparing two options that look similar on the surface. Now that same credential means something to the person reading it. They go, oh, okay, so that's what that actually does for me. It went from a fact about you to useful information for them. So wherever you've got credentials on your trust page, just take the extra sentence. Don't make it salesy. Just be straightforward about it. Here's what this is, and here's why it actually matters when you're working with someone on a trip like yours. Okay, this next part, I think, is honestly one of the biggest opportunities on a travel advisor's trust page, and almost nobody uses it the way they should. Here's the thing that makes you different from like a lawyer writing their about page or an accountant. Your personal travel experience is part of your credential. It's not just a fun fact about you, it's directly relevant to whether someone should trust your recommendation. Most advisors have actually been to a lot of places, ship inspections, fam trips, site visits, actual legwork. You've stayed at the resorts you recommend. You've sailed the ships you suggest. You've walked the streets of the places you specialize in. And then it shows up on the page as avid traveler or passionate about exploring the world, which I mean, at this point, that's basically invisible. Every single person in this industry says that about themselves. It tells the reader nothing. What actually builds trust is specificity. So instead of avid traveler, something like, I've done ship inspections on over 20 cruise ships across 8 different lines. I can tell you exactly what the difference feels like between a premium line and a mainstream one, which ships have better entertainment, which ones are worth it for families versus couples traveling without kids. Or you could say, I've been to the Amalfi Coast 4 times, and at this point, I've got pretty strong opinions about which towns are worth the extra effort to get to, which restaurants are actually good versus just famous, and which times of year you'll be sharing a cliff road with 100 tour buses. Somebody reads that and thinks, okay, this person actually knows this. I'm not getting a recommendation from someone who just read a blog post about it. And when you're about to spend a real amount of money on a trip, that distinction matters enormously. So let me walk through how I'd actually structure this. The rough order I think makes sense for a trust page. First, before you even introduce yourself, I'd open with something that shows you understand the situation the person's in. Doesn't need to be long, a sentence or two, something like, most of the people who find me are trying to plan a trip they've been thinking about for a while, and they've reached the point where doing it themselves feels like more trouble than it's worth. If that's the person reading it, and a lot of time it is, they go, yes, exactly that. Okay, now I want to know more about you. From there, your story. How'd you get into this? What made you stick with it? What do you actually love about the work? And I don't mean a formal career history like in 2016, I transitioned from corporate sales into travel. I mean the real version. Because honestly, when travel advisors tell me how they got into this, it's almost always a genuinely good story. Somebody had a trip that changed something for them and they wanted to give other people that. Or they realized they were the person all their friends called whenever they had a travel question and just decided to make it official. Or they planned their own destination wedding and discovered, hey, I'm actually really good at this. Whatever your real version is, that's the one that belongs on the page. Then next, your personal travel experience. Be specific, just like we talked about. Not a list of every country you set foot in, a description of what you actually know and what that means for someone trusting you with their trip. Then, credentials contextualized. Then, and this is the one most people skip, something about what it's actually like to work with you. Process, communication, what to expect. I want to come back to that one in a second because I think it's genuinely one of the most useful things you can put on this page. And then a call to action, which I'll also come back to because almost nobody does this either. So, the section almost everyone skips, what it's like to work with me, let's talk about that section because I really think it's one of the most underused things on a trust page. When someone's deciding whether to work with an advisor, especially for the first time, they've got a bunch of questions floating around that don't really fit anywhere else on the site. Like, how does this actually work? Do I just tell you where I want to go and you take it from there? What do you need from me? What's the timeline like? How will we actually communicate? Am I going to get a bunch of options to pick from? Or are you just going to tell me what you'd recommend? Those are real questions. People genuinely wonder about this stuff. And if your site never answers it, if there's no FAQs, they're going to show up to that first call still carrying those questions. They'll be a little uncertain and a little unsure about what they're walking into. But if your trust page just tells them, honestly explains your process, how you like to communicate, what makes for a good working relationship in your experience, what you need from them to do your best work, that does a few things at once. First, it sets realistic expectations up front. It makes that first call so much smoother because they already know roughly what they're getting into. And this is the part most people don't think about. It helps people self select. Someone reads it and thinks, yeah, that's exactly how I'd want this to go. And now they feel a lot more confident just reaching out. Things like how you run a planning conversation, whether you charge a planning fee and how that works, what happens if something goes wrong mid trip, how you stay in touch once someone's actually traveling. That's practical stuff people genuinely wonder about and almost never see addressed anywhere. If you don't have an FAQs page, this is a great place to address all that information right here on the trust page. And okay, I want to bring up the photo on your trust page because I think people underestimate how much it actually matters. Travel advising is a personal service. Somebody is choosing to work with you specifically, not a company, not a brand, you. And they want to see who you are, not a logo, not a stock photo of the beach, an actual photo of an actual person. And I've seen, honestly, a lot of about pages where the photo is clearly from some conference 4 years ago, or it's this really stiff, overly formal headshot that doesn't look anything like the person who shows up on a video call. And that creates this small disconnect, you know. The photo set one expectation, and then the actual person shows up and it's just a little different than what you pictured. It's a small thing, but it's friction. And we've talked about how friction adds up. A current, natural photo of you, not overproduced, not overly done up, it does more for trust than most people give it credit for. And if you can get a shot of yourself somewhere relevant, on a ship, in a destination you specialize in, at a resort you recommend, that's even better because now it's doing double duty. It shows you as a real person and it shows you've actually been to the places you're talking about. So that brings me to the call to action on the trust page. This is the thing I see missing more than almost anything else when a client brings me their website for the first time. Most about pages just end. You scroll to the bottom and there's nothing there, which is honestly a real missed opportunity because think about who's actually down there. Someone who read your entire about page is a pretty warm lead at that point. They took the time, they're interested, they might genuinely be ready to take the next step right then. And what do? Nothing. You make them scroll all the way back up, find the homepage, hunt down the scheduler. That's just unnecessary friction at the exact moment they were ready to act. So put something right there at the bottom. It doesn't need to be complicated. Something like, if this sounds like a good fit, I'd love to talk about your trip. You can book a call right here and link straight to your scheduler. You can even put one in the middle of the page too, maybe right after the experience section or the process section, because some people are going to be ready before they hit the bottom. They don't need to read every word. Let them take the step the moment they feel ready to take it. Last piece, and honestly, I think this one might matter more than people realize, the writing voice on this page. This is like almost universally the place on a travel advisor site where the writing sounds the least like the actual person because it feels formal, it feels important, so people switch into this whole different voice. Third person, polished, professional sounding, nothing like how they actually talk. And then that same person gets on a call, and this warm, kind of enthusiastic, genuinely fun person shows up, and it's a completely different vibe than the stiff bio they just read. It's a little bit of a whiplash moment. The page set one expectation, and the person delivered something else. Better usually, but still different. And different creates this little moment of recalibration that didn't need to happen. If your trust page actually sounds like you, the way you naturally explain things, the enthusiasm you genuinely have, that slightly casual way you talk about what you do, that gap just doesn't exist. People show up to that first call already feeling like they kind of know you, and that changes the whole tone of the call. It's warmer right from the start, easier, more natural for both sides. So read your about page out loud. Actually do it. Does it sound like something you'd say to a person sitting across from you, or does it sound like somebody trying to write a professional bio? If you wouldn't say it out loud in a normal conversation, it probably doesn't belong on the page. Your trust page is one of the only pages on your site where someone is actively trying to decide whether they like you, not whether you're qualified, whether they like you and trust you and can picture themselves working with you. That's a completely different job than most about pages are written to do. And the wild thing is, most of what actually builds that trust you already have. Your story, your experience, the way you naturally talk about this stuff when you're excited about it. None of that needs to be invented. It just needs to actually make it onto the page instead of getting replaced by a more professional version of you that, frankly, nobody asked for. The advisors whose trust pages really work, the ones where people show up to the first call already feeling like they know them, they didn't get there by sounding more impressive. They got there by sounding more like themselves and trusting that themselves was already enough. And honestly, that's kind of the theme running through a lot of what I talk about on this channel. The things that actually move the needle on your site usually aren't the polished, impressive sounding moves. They're the honest ones. If you want to dig into your own about page, your trust page, and figure out what's working, what's maybe getting in the way, That's something I genuinely enjoy doing with you. You just head to the website, grab a time on the calendar, and we can pull it up together. And then we'll just talk through it in real time. So I'm Justin Hinkle. This is the Travel Advisor website show. Subscribe. There's more here if you want to keep going. Stick around.